Cool. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank
Returning
you.
guest on our Live and Learn podcast. I think after the success of our last one, the navigating cross-cultural teams, you're back to discuss embracing learning in the flow of work with us today.
Yes. Yes, very very exciting topic and one I'm very passionate about, so I'm glad to be here.
And I think you framed this quite nicely. It's not embracing it, which is the title. It's you've got no choice, which I quite like. That frames the discussion I think we're going to have today, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. Should we do it? It's already happening. Don't have a choice. It's going on.
Yes, and I think that's a lot of that is people how they consume content in their own time,
Mhm.
whether it's Netflix, Amazon Prime, or Spotify, or whatever it is, and then that's inflating their expectations of how they learn at work, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not to say that the world of the workshop or the seminar has died because
Yeah.
they still have their place. But in the workplace or the work environment, it's people are learning when they want. They're learning on their schedule rather than, for example, the schedule of an L&D manager. So yeah, it's definitely changed in the 10+ years I've been in L&D. Definitely.
And I think there's lots of studies that people have kind of maximum 24 minutes a week, which to be honest, I think seems quite a lot now actually, to commit to development and improving and training and so on. So that the windows are getting smaller, I think, especially with the pandemic, isn't it? Where remote working's been great and I think that's been widespread, but people can be busier despite saving on commute time, I think. More was expected.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the lack of commute, I think you've nailed it in the head there. It's people if they wanted to learn, whether it was listen to an audiobook or listen to the news or whatever,
Yeah.
then the commute's the perfect time to do it.
Or this
because-
podcast, of course.
Of course, this podcast. Yes, I'm
Absolutely.
expecting everybody. Mind the doors. But yeah, that's when you do it. But when you no longer have a commute, there's only like the intro of a podcast you can hear between your bedroom and your living room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
that's my learning done. Thanks. 4 steps. So yeah, it's the expectation, and when people log on, they think that they have to work. So I think learning in the flow of work is so important in this day and age to learner engagement, but also learner empowerment, which is so difficult. Well, was difficult to achieve. Now it's happening. How can L&D
Embrace it.
and businesses capitalize on it? Yeah, exactly.
And I guess you're really well placed to talk about this because you've got experience with Lidl. I think you were there 16 years, a
Yep.
long time.
Yeah.
You've moved on to Norcella and you've Evaluate as well.
Mhm.
And you're a trainer at heart. I think that was when you first joined L&D. You still do a lot
Yeah.
of trainers sessions. So
Yeah, it's. I think we all have areas. L&D is such a wide industry, and there's so many different roles you can take. But for me, the best part of my job still is delivering training.
Yeah.
It's seeing the light bulb moments. Even if I could be delivering to 40 people, if only one of those 40 people has a light bulb moment, that's it. My day's made. Just seeing people go, oh yeah, I can do it differently. You're like, right, boom, fine, days of success. But yeah, delivery for me is fantastic. But definitely since the pandemic, even more so in the role I'm in now, with teams globally across different time zones, different territories, delivery is almost non-existent. A lot more of it is done ad hoc. I get people asking me questions. Chris, can you just jump on a call and help with this topic, kind of thing. There is still place for workshops, for seminars, for webinars, in cascade of information. But from a training perspective, yeah, delivery is the highlight of my job. I absolutely love it. But the need for it and the want for it, the days of, in my experience so far, the days of 6, 7, 8 hour sessions where you get
like a day
everyone room
course or-
gone. Yeah. I think that the longest session I've run in the last 12 months has been 3.5 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was it was very targeted. Like, it was great, but when you've got short period of time, people are engaged that little bit more. I think for all day sessions, people are going, right, okay, there'll be like an hour of icebreakers, then there'll be
Lunch
content.
or-
Yeah, and you're just like, yeah, this is really protracted out. But for condensed sessions, that the learners are a bit more engaged. But even still, 3.5 hours now, it is a struggle to keep people's
Yeah,
attention.
absolutely.
And people just aren't used to it. And I think for workshops or for in-person sessions, they're a lot more interactive. than they used to be. Like, I don't have them sitting down. It's give them tasks to
interesting,
do.
yeah.
Get them up and moving around the room. Learning in the flow of work, just in time learning, is definitely the new normal. And I think it was always there before,
Yeah, that's it.
but it was there before in a more transactional need.
Yep.
I think this is probably one of these things you've always known about it. You've just not maybe known it as learning in the flow of work,
Or prioritised it, or talked about it in that context, or yeah.
Exactly, but we've all done it. How is that I do this formula again?
YouTube,
you watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
You use Google to work it all out, and you're like, oh, that's how that's learning in the flow of work.
Or in the office when it was 5 days a week for a lot of people, getting someone to quickly show you it, or about the 70-20-10 model, or whatever.
100%, and I think it's always been there, but no one's considered that as learning because it's not taking place in a classroom,
and it's not tracked maybe sometimes either on an LMS or
exactly. And I think LMSs are great for recording training, but they're also a hindrance because people think if it's not recorded, it didn't happen.
It never happened.
Yeah, and you're like, no.
And then it's not tracked, and then the return investment isn't there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think learning in the flow of work has become more obvious to the industry or to businesses, because there's no need for people to block out a day or half a day of learning. If they've got 30 minutes or if they've got an hour, they'll fill that with something they need to know, whether that is to improve their time management skills or whether it is to work out the best way to do Power BI reporting. They'll work out, they'll do it themselves. The trick or the challenge facing L&D professionals is, how do we enable that successfully, and how do we help the learners go forward rather than go, well, they can Google it. It's not structured though.
A lot of people want the LMS to be a Google of learning. The amount of times I've heard that is.
Oh yes,
I've heard that hundreds of times, I think.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, they'll just Google the LMS or Google. That's also an option.
Yeah, just embrace things that outside the LMS really sometimes is possible, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But I think to what you mentioned earlier is content also can't be hours long.
No.
You know, it needs to be bite-sized, it needs to be digestible. I won't, if there's a YouTube video that's more than 5 minutes, I don't click on it.
Yeah, no. You got it's 2 minutes to me. You obviously got better attention span than me, but yeah, 2 minutes is my kind of like mark.
Yeah, you're like, I don't have time for this. No, it's all I need to work out is where is the bracket going, or where's the and sign. I can't work this one out. And you're like, oh, fine, done. That's once I've got the answer, move on. And I think that is also the challenge facing L&D, is that we run the risk of learning becoming more transactional.
Yeah.
You know, once I've got the answer, I stop listening.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
No, once I've got it, move on. You're like, no, we need to find,
or reflect on it, or
Yeah. The challenge is not just making content available for people to go, whether it's a repository or whatever, but it's drawing them in.
Yeah.
We all fall down TikTok, YouTube rabbit holes. You know, you just watch one video and before you know it, it's 3 days. Your beard's like 4 centimeters longer and you've not eaten. You know, we've all done it. But we want to do the same for learners. You want them to go into a library, or you want them to research something that leads to A, leads to B, that leads to C. That's what you want, and it's creating a pathway without them knowing. So they are learning in the flow of work, but something else tickles their fancy and they're going, oh, I got the answer I needed, but I'm going to bookmark this and I'm going to come back to it when I've got my next 30 minutes spare. And that is, it's a way of drawing learners in to learn without them knowing, but also it's providing them the resource they need in that instance. How do I fix this Excel spreadsheet? How do I improve my sales techniques? I've got the answer, but I'm interested in this, so I'm going to bookmark it. You know, that's why your YouTube videos all are down the right-hand side of your screen.
Yeah.
You would be interested in this. I would be. Yes. What day is it? Yeah, it's definitely a change in learner habits from when I joined L&D.
And it's, I think, asking our audience to stick with us, but I guess it is a slight shameless plug, but it is relevant for the topic, is, I guess, learning the flow of work when you start working with video arts and Lidl changed your outlook quite a bit when we were prepping this episode. there's lots of use of QR codes and different techniques to get people engaged, especially the kind of white and blue collar workers. And there's that to consider. Not everyone's in an office or has access to emails and so on. Just talk us through that journey a little, I guess, because there's a lot went on there.
Yeah, definitely. And my interaction with video arts was my first foray into learning in the flow of work. And for me, yes, I've moved on to a different role, but for me, that's still in the back of my mind as the gold standard. What did I do with video arts? How can I maintain that? But yeah, for when we started working together, it was the repository of learning videos that Video Arts has was second to none. It's great, and it's all bite size. It's all digestible really quickly. Perfect. Someone only has 10 minutes, or they hear referred to something, they can watch the video. Perfect. That's great. We put QR codes around so people were then able to access the content on personal devices in break rooms, welfare areas across their organisation. It was all put up so people could learn when they wanted to, and more importantly, if they wanted to. It's not it's not forcing it down their throats. It's here. Check it out. So yeah, we had scan QR codes, and again, that's a change in learning as well. It's learning on personal, yes, but it's also learning on mobile devices rather than, company surf stations, company computers, company networks. It's
embracing everyone's got a phone and is on it a lot. So
exactly.
Embrace it.
Exactly. So it's utilizing that. It's then going, where else can we incorporate this repository? And employee apps, intranet sites,
socials.
Socials, definitely. Integrating it into existing learning resources as well, whether they are workshops that may have still been being run, or nice to haves. Whether it was, I remember one of the big successes we had within Lidl was it was a well-being initiative. I think it was mental health.
That's right. Yep.
Obviously, a lot of businesses now do a lot of communications and a lot around it, quite rightly so. But we were then able to further utilize the learning repository from Video Arts and go, well, scan this QR code, and not only do you get taken to Video Arts, but the QR code takes you directly to this package. Going back to my earlier point, was they learned all they wanted to about mental health, and then we drew them in with
other things.
Oh, look, here is management techniques.
Here's a conversation or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And that really, really helped. And to my knowledge, we got quite good statistics out of it. But I think the other challenge that we face, and you mentioned it, blue collar versus white collar, is the organisation I'm in now, everyone is desk-based. So a learning repository, really, I could just do one solution, really. I can have different avenues to get to that solution, but I could really just do one solution. In a different organisation, such as a retailer, you've got direct customer-facing roles, you've got operational roles, you've got roles that will never touch a computer. How do you make things accessible to them? And that is where, from a learning and development perspective, there is a big overlap between your internal comms, team strategy, avenues.
Kind of marketing in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, because everybody knows what your function is. Everybody knows, if we need support, there's L&D. But shouting about a resource to say, you don't have to come to me anymore, you can do this yourself, it's a big internal marketing piece. But it's supporting all areas of the business in that learning in their flow, and when they need to learn, or when not even when they need to learn, when they want to learn.
Yeah, I think that's the key difference, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, if somebody needs to learn something, especially if we look at compliance topics,
is the obvious
then
one.
They do it. It's this is mitigating business risk. Do it. But if they don't want to learn how to be a better leader, and they don't want to learn how to improve their time management, stakeholder management, whatever, then they're not going to do it. But if you're empowering them to say, you can learn whenever you want, because we have all of these resources.
You market it and get the awareness, and maybe a brand or whatever, how you do it.
Exactly. And the digital content that we've got at Video Arts, that's how people digest everything nowadays. It's video content. So it makes that part makes internal marketing a little bit easier.
The famous faces help is a bit of a way to
yes,
get people
that's also true. You know this person from insert show here. They're also about to tell you how to manage mental health.
Yeah. I wanted to pick up what was interesting is we mentioned at the top of this episode about embracing learning the flow of work, and it's here and it's been here a while. It's getting that maybe senior leadership buy-in, because traditionally people pay for classroom sessions, they purchase a large LMS for quite a lot of money, and your job is to prove return investment on that through logins and usage and compliance courses and so on. How have you seen shifts in senior leadership teams? Could be little, your current role or both, just since the pandemic maybe. Are people accepting you're not always going to have a direct return investment link to learning the flow of work, but it's necessary? Have you found that kind of struggle?
Yeah, in my personal experience, it's kind of gone the other way in that
Interesting, okay.
the return of investment question is the biggest question that I get asked.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of all this remote working. Everybody wants to ensure that it's not necessarily a lack of trust, but it's everyone wants to make sure that, listen, we need to we're no longer, I don't know, paying rent for a building, for example, because half the people are working from home. That's great, but we still need to be hitting our business targets.
Yeah.
Which, fair point. Don't hit your targets, no revenue, no jobs. So completely agree. But there is still a lot, that ROI question is more, because I think before it was a lot of people would just assume, yeah, fine, we'll let you away for a workworkshop, we'll let you do this, but yeah, that's not a problem. Now it's up but times money, Chris. How can you let hold on, what? So yeah, for me, that C-suite champion, I'm very lucky. I have 2 on my
Perfect.
On my global exec team, which is fantastic. But for me, I don't necessarily focus on workshops. We've actually removed them all. The only ones we do are leadership, but that's because we do them across the group as opposed to everyone in the different companies group. We do them group wide, so it fosters networking. But everything else, they've been completely removed, and it's building that resource for employees, and for our teams to say it's here. You can do what you want, and allowing drop-in sessions to come, because then that way you're not saying everyone's going, they're learning because they need to, because they need it for their job. You're like, yep, fine. And for some reason that I can get over the line better than a 4-hour workshop. I don't know how, but I'm able to get that over the line a lot quicker, a lot easier. So yeah, it's still there, but it needs to. I think that question frustrates a lot of HR people, because when you deal with people, the metrics can't always be tangible.
No.
And I think it does frustrate people, but it needs to be there, because it's
it's getting the balance, isn't it?
Yeah, someone has a profit and loss sheet to manage, and they need to be able to do their job. But it's, for me, I have found it change since the pandemic, but I've found it go the other way, and I need to demonstrate it a lot more than, yeah, it's fine, Chris, you can train people, crack on. Like, okay, thanks.
You've always got to be a lot smarter with a kind of typical leadership development program, or obviously you design it for your audience and the end user, but maybe you just got to factor in what people want, but also the return investment, and there's a marriage there, isn't there? There's a bit of a compromise sometimes with these things.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think that from a return on investment, it doesn't always have to be monetary value.
That's a good point.
One of the big selling points that we had for Video Arts was, yes, okay, we're paying for the service, but look at the amount of clicks, look at the amount of hours that are being watched, and you're like, you're growing as an organization. That's your return on investment. Your knowledge economy is growing. Your people are learning. I think it was leadership was one of our biggest ones in Lido. It was workshop based and non-workshop based, but you're going, I'm not even forcing this down people's throat, and it's our biggest topic. And that was a really good ROI. And it was this is the investment, but this is the monetary investment, but look at the hours returned.
And that can turn to things like retention, keeping your talent. There's a long list of those things that don't always link directly, but there's a path there, isn't there?
100%.
Cool. So we always end our episodes with a live and learn story
Yes.
or share, which you're returning
Remember
guests.
the last one? Yeah.
So if you were to go back, what would your kind of live and learn be from learning the flow of work? We mentioned a lot of success stories there, maybe a mistake or something if you had your time again, or if you're planning another workshop or whatever. What would be your kind of takeaway for people live and learn for learning in the flow of work? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, put me on the spot. We did the last episode, so I should know this by now. Again, I know I use Microsoft Excel in this example of learning in the flow of work. But for me, I think the biggest lesson I would say to myself is don't do classroom sessions for practical skills. Learning on the job, being able to directly apply it, has meant the stuff that I have learned in Excel, for example, on my own, and not in a fake classroom setting and fake data sets. I've retained a lot more. So yeah, for me, I would go if it's transactional.
Learn the flow of work is
far better.
And do it yourself rather than being well, I agree with that.
Yeah, well, not yourself. I mean, if you've got someone sitting next to you and you go, two heads are always better than one. But yeah, I think taking charge of that learning myself definitely far better.
So there's certain things that lend themselves to learn the flow of work and some that don't maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. No, but thank you, Chris. That's been really helpful, and I'm sure lots of people will take a lot of learnings from that and they can use in their organisations. And as our first returning guest, a big thank you for joining us again and putting up with me and and giving us your time.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Correct answer.